Hey movers, shakers, and the stuck but curious. I'm Freya Gordon, and this is Good Shift, the podcast that helps you figure out what's next in your career and make a move with confidence. If you've spent years building a career in one lane and now feel trapped by the very path that you worked so hard to create, today's guest is going to challenge all of that. Nikki Creasy, the founder of Peachy Lip Co, never planned to start a business. In fact, she never even wanted to own one. And I know many of you listening will relate to that. The belief that running your own business is just not you. But as you're about to hear, never say never. Nikki's career began in agency life, working in marketing and PR. She spent 9 years climbing from intern to account director before stepping out on her own to freelance and eventually build her own PR and marketing business, Blah PR and Marketing. What prompted that transition and how she actually made it happen, we'll hear from Nikki today. In 2022, she launched Peachy Lip Co, a beauty brand built on simplicity, fun, and easy-to-use products. And we actually have some here in the studio today. As you can see, fun, easy to use, and super cute if you're watching this. And in just 3 years, she's grown a community of more than 30,000 followers on Instagram and navigated product development, cash flow pressure, stock challenges, and supplier trust. All the early stage realities, tips and tricks that you're going to learn about while tuning in today. As Peachy grew, she made the call to sell her PR agency and go all in. And this part is important. After 2 years, she almost walked away from Peachy entirely. She searched job sites, she questioned everything, but she managed to hang in there. And a year later, she's grown in ways that she didn't expect, both personally and professionally. So today, we're diving into the real behind the scenes of the early founder journey, what pushed her to leave a career that she'd spent 9 years building, why she started Peachy Lip Co, how she chose her products, found the manufacturers that she trusted, built a community from scratch, navigated new motherhood while building a business, and the mindset shifts that she needed to create something she genuinely loves. So Nikki, welcome to Good Shift. It is amazing to have you on here today.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you. It is fantastic to be here.
Okay, so you've mentioned that entrepreneurship was never something that you saw for yourself. What belief or identity were you holding at the time that made you feel business ownership just wasn't in your lane? And then how did that identity shift as Blah and Peachy grew?
Yeah, I just never ever considered owning a business. I didn't want to. I didn't want to own a business. I actually went to like a Reiki, and he told me that he was like a little bit psychic or, whatever. He said, I can see business ownership in your future. And I thought, that sounds horrendous. I don't want that at all. And now I can't imagine ever working for anyone else again.
And how long ago was that you went to this Reiki person and they told you that?
Oh, maybe 8 years ago.
Okay, so you were sort of in the early to middle stages of being at your marketing job.
Yep, full-time employee at a PR and marketing agency, and I loved it. And I just thought, I don't want to start my own business at all.
And so you, at that time, thought, okay, that sounds a bit silly, and then you were really excited about the career path that you were building in your marketing and PR agency.
Very much so. I loved it. Yep.
Okay, well, I want to hear more about this then. After spending so long in your career, and it sounds like you're feeling pretty good, what changed?
The PR and marketing agency that I worked in restructured. So all of the full-time employees were made contractors instead. And it was full-time work, but COVID hit. We lost a huge amount of clients overnight because they were scared from COVID. And so I actually was referred to by, I guess, ex-clients or friends or whatever to some brands who were in supermarkets. So they were still running through COVID. And I also contracted to them, and that's sort of how Blah PR happened. And over time, I contracted less and less to the agency and then just went out full-time on Blah when the financials made sense.
Oh, so that was actually quite a nice transition for you from you getting that experience of contracting yourself and working with all these different clients, which I'm assuming built up your confidence a bit that you could do that?
Yes, yep. Once I sort of was making, I had a number in mind of okay, I need to be making this much a month before I can kind of pull away from contracting altogether and just go all in on Blah. So it was a really safe way into business ownership, I guess.
So where did this shift occur in your brain from not having wanted to own your own business at all to thinking, okay, I'm doing the contracting, but I actually want to start up my own business now?
Yeah, even when we were made contractors, I not rebelled against it. I really did not want to do it. And I actually convinced the owner of the agency to let me stay on as a full-time employee. And she did. And then within about 6 months, I saw, oh, actually, as a contractor, I can see how this is working now. And went into that and then, built up Blah on the side. But the month became a contractor to that agency, which was October 2019. I found out that I was pregnant. So that was quite scary, going from like full-time employment to not full-time employment, and I've got a baby on the way. But yes, it all worked out in the end.
And when you started Blah and you went into doing your own thing, at that point, did you feel like you'd gained the confidence and the excitement for running your own business, or were you still feeling a bit on the fence that you didn't necessarily want that to be your path?
No, I was pretty happy with it, I think, because I was sort of doing Blah and contracting to the other agency for a little while, and I had also a newborn son by that stage. So it kind of worked out. It was just very, very flexible, and it all sort of happened quite naturally. And I felt confident by then. I had some good contacts through networking and just people that I worked with within Blah, and they were referring me to their clients and on and on. It all sort of built up, and then I thought, this is working.
So the timing seems a little crazy that you are pregnant and then you've just had your first child and you're going out on your own. Mm-hmm. How did you rationalise that, going to start your new business without having security from another job at the same time as now having a kid to look after?
I think I was scared and I loved it. Luckily, I have a very supportive partner, and he has his own business, and I knew we were going to be okay financially. I still wanted to have my own thing, of course, but it was a lot. But actually, I like to be busy. There is a stress that comes with that, but I like it, and I actually ended up being induced a few weeks early with my son. He wasn't growing, and so I was induced, but I had a bunch of Blah clients starting once my maternity leave ended. They had approached me and I said, look, I'm going to have a baby, so we're going to, wait a bit. And then about a week after my son was born, I woke up, it was exactly 1 week, I woke up and I was like, no one's coming to visit today. What am I going to do? My other mum's going to hate me for saying this. He was such a good baby. He just slept so well, like all day. And I emailed one of the clients who was meant to be starting in 4 months, who I was meant to be starting with in 4 months, and said, I got nothing to do. Should I start now? And he said, what do you mean? You're about to have a baby? And I said, no, I had him a week ago. I'm ready to go. But it meant that I could start slowly, like a few hours a week, and gradually build. And that's really how I built Blah. And then I got some help with the baby once he started to be a little bit more awake. And just built it from there, really.
And so did you feel like you had any loss or fears around leaving the agency that you were working with when you decided to go out on your own, or did that at that time just feel like a really natural progression and that all felt comfortable?
It did feel really natural, because it was sort of like the more I took on with Blah, the more I reduced my work at the other agency. And I loved that agency. I loved who I worked with. I loved who I worked for. Like, they gave me my start as an intern, knowing nothing, fresh out of uni, actually still at uni, still finishing my degree. And I loved working there. So although I was scared at the start becoming a contractor, by the time I was ready to step fully into Blah, I only had one client with that agency. And so it was sort of just a very natural progression. And it was actually a really lovely conversation that the CEO and I had. and we were probably around about coming to the same idea at the same time as she was sort of seeing, I have this whole other agency, but I still work with her. And so it was sort of just, I don't know, beautiful timing, and it just worked. Luckily.
And can you tell us a bit about what it was like to go out freelancing? I think a lot of people are in the position that you have been in, where they've built up a great career and a lot of trust, and they may even have a network from work they've done in an agency, whether it's marketing, advertising, all the different bits and pieces. And they're thinking, hey, I think I want to go out on my own and try do some freelancing. Maybe it will give me some more flexibility or different bits and pieces. Can you talk us through what the realities, the good and the bad, have been like when you jumped into doing blah full time?
So 2 things with becoming a freelancer. You mentioned flexibility before. So true. I loved the flexibility, and I love it now in Peachy as well. Having that flexibility is amazing. You do go from working 9 to 5 to instead working 24/7, but it's a little bit more on your terms. I love to go up the mount, and I go up during the day, and I'm sometimes doing emails while I'm doing it, and it's amazing. And I couldn't do that with a 9 to 5, but it also sometimes I'm replying to emails at 8 o'clock at night, or a DM at 9 o'clock at night, or something like that.
And then there's obviously the part when you're going out freelancing of not having that steady stream of work. If there is no clients at the time, no one else is paying you. Is that something that you ever had to come across?
With COVID, it was, I remember the first week when we were told that we're going into lockdown, and then we went into lockdown, and I was 7 months pregnant, and we were moving house the next day, and it was all a lot, and suddenly I'd lost all this work from the agency because all their clients had freaked out. Yeah, I was thinking, I don't know how this is going to work and how we're going to pay a mortgage on a house that we're about to move into, and it was very scary. I think if it's something that you really want to do and you really believe that you can do it, and you're able and committed to actually working really, really hard, then you'll do it. If you want to do it, you'll do it.
For someone wanting to go out freelancing, what do you think, let's say specifically in the sort of marketing type space, what do you think are a few things that are really essential skills or things to have when you're going out on your own?
Yes. So, and this is probably for anyone going out on their own. It could be a plumber who's going to start their own plumbing business. He could be a really good plumber. Does he know how to run a business? So, and that was the same with me, and part of my fear of starting my own business is like, I love marketing and I still love it, and it's like a massive part of my job at Peachy. But I don't know how to run a marketing business. I'd seen it inside the agency, and so I had like a little bit of knowledge here and there, but I think you've just got to educate yourself as much as you can. Talk to people that you admire who are doing something similar or who run their own businesses or are in the same industry. Listen to all the podcasts that you can of people that you look up to and aspire to. Yeah, you just have to become like a real sponge and absorb all the knowledge that you can, and get an accountant, because you're going to have to pay your own tax and GST and all that kind of stuff, which you wouldn't have had to do as a full-time employee. If you start a new business or brand, trademark it straight away. Try and do things as well as possible with the resources that you've got. Done is better than perfect, but still you want to go out with your best foot forward.
That's really helpful advice, and I think those are things that are hard to think through when you haven't gone out and done it, so it's good for people to know. You are essentially setting up a business. You are the business when you're going out freelancing, so it's good to understand the realities and the exciting pieces around doing that.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know, so you've just got to try and figure it out.
And get people to help you fill in the gaps, as you said, like an accountant for things that you're not quite sure on.
Exactly.
What would you say to someone who has invested years in building their title, their salary, their reputation, and that's stopping them from making a change? How would you think they could get unstuck from the identity that they have built?
I can so relate to it. I had so much identity tied up in being an account director at this agency, and I was so proud of myself. Like, I'd done the thing. I started as an intern. I worked my way up. I knew that I was like an asset to the business, and all kinds of things. And yeah, so I can really relate to that. I had so much pride in the work that I did. Like we discussed, I was sort of like forced out of that mindset. I would probably still be in that business now if I hadn't been made a contractor, and I would probably still absolutely love it. But if you want a different life or a different career or a different something, you have to do things differently. You can't keep doing what you've always done. So although you are stuck in or comfortable in that identity, if you want to change, you've got to make a change. And it can be really uncomfortable and weird, and it can feel like failure or, I don't know, just a really weird feeling, and people won't understand why you're doing what you're doing, especially if you're going from a comfortable job to your own business. People will sort of be, lip balm. Like, come on. There's already so many makeup brands out there. Like, you're going to compete with L'Oreal. Don't listen to those people. Every market is saturated, and you can carve your own little space in there and find your people.
That's awesome. That sort of brings me to the question, how did we get from blah to Peachy? Because you said that you didn't even want to have your own business. So this is already an amazing step and a huge change that you've made from going to being an employee in this job that was epic and great, and you'd climbed to being an account director there, which is awesome. And then you'd gone off and you'd started your own marketing and PR agency. And so what's this next moment that has led you to starting this beauty brand, Peachy?
Yeah, and I loved Blah, and I loved all our clients at Blah. Still keep in contact with heaps of them. I absolutely froth marketing. I could talk about it all day long. But not every client wants to do everything that I tell them that they should do. They want to build their Instagram following, but they don't want to be on Instagram stories every day. They might not have a very fun or sexy product that they're selling, or service, or whoever it is. I worked with law firms, accounting firms, all kinds of, and as well as like consumer goods. So it was sort of like a desire from me to market my own products the way that I wanted to, with the advice that I would give me if I was a client of myself. And that's what I did, and I always have dry lips. And I would wear, and I really, okay, this is maybe going to sound silly. This is sort of why I started Peachy specifically. I always wanted to be, which is hilarious because I'm just wearing lip balm today. I always wanted to be the kind of girl that wore lipstick all the time and looked put together all the time. I always just thought that like, nice shoes, nice bag, lippy. Wow, what an outfit. You look put together. And I really tried in all lipsticks, whatever, dried my lips out for like days afterwards, and I just couldn't figure it out. I couldn't really figure out makeup. I'm not a makeup artist. I had the same products that I would just buy over and over again for years. I had the exact same face of makeup on every single time I wore makeup. And I just thought, I'm sure that there's a way to do this differently and to do this in a fun way. And I can really imagine some fun marketing that I could do within that business with great products.
And did you think about other things outside of Peachy being the beauty brand? Did you have a lot of ideas cycling through your head? Because, I imagine being in marketing and PR, there's lots of cool stuff coming through on your radar, and that can make a lot of ideas turn. Or was it just this one you started thinking for all those reasons that you just said, that this would be something cool for you to do, and you got really intentional about Peachy?
Yes, and also I always wanted to have a beauty brand as a client within either the first agency that I worked in or within Blah, and we just never had one. I probably didn't pursue any, so I wasn't really making that goal happen anyway. But that was always something that I really wanted. But I did actually look into, I don't think I've talked about this before, I looked into doing gift boxes, like a celebration box vibe.
Yeah, do you mean that has like a few different products from different places?
Yep, I thought that would be really fun. I even set up some wholesale accounts at, like a chocolate brand and a crackers brand, and I love a platter. And so it was sort of like, how can we do really cool platter kits? But pretty soon I kind of lost. I didn't start it. I was just sort of looking into it, and then I just didn't really have the excitement for it. And as soon as I nailed into the lip products, that was all I wanted. And I was so focused on it from there.
And once you'd come up with the lip products, how did you validate your idea?
I didn't.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? So you came up with the idea then, and did you just roll full steam ahead into it?
Came up with the idea and was working in talks with a manufacturer and talking about samples and testing and blah, 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 blah. And I never really told anyone. I told my husband, and he was like, yeah, cool, sounds great, whatever, lip gloss, cool, lip balm. And I told my lash tech. So I used to get lash extensions all the time. And I told her, because I was lying down vulnerable, talking to her about it. She was like, that sounds great. That was the validation that I got. A lot of people in my life wouldn't have even known that Peachy was coming until a couple of weeks before, when I was like, hey, I'm going to launch a makeup brand.
And why didn't you tell people about it?
I didn't want anyone's opinions. I did. To be fair, I did want opinions, and I did give some sample pots to friends and things like that of our lip and cheek tints, which were the first products that we launched with. It's like a lippy, a blush, and an eyeshadow in one little pot. And they all loved it, but also with people that they're either going to say that they love it because they love you, or they feel weird that you're starting a business, and so they're going to say something negative. And I kind of knew that, and so I just thought, I'm just going to start it, do it, and get feedback from my actual customers who don't know me. And that's what I did. I just really, really wanted to do it, and that's why I didn't really get any validation for it.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you knew you wanted to do it so badly that you didn't want to hear anything bad or negative that might stop you. And you also didn't feel like it was going to be helpful to get feedback from people that you knew was only going to be positive because they loved you anyway.
Yeah.
And in terms of what you said about some people might feel weird about you starting a business and say something negative, I think that's a really interesting point to dig into a little bit, because it does happen a lot. Can you tell me what you think that sort of weird feeling is, and how maybe if people do end up telling someone about their business idea and they get a funny reaction from someone that is close to them and they really hoped would be supportive, can you tell me a little bit about how you look at that? Because I do think it's important, because it does happen to people a lot.
Yeah, I don't really know exactly what it is, but it definitely happens, and you just have to ignore those people, really. Like I said, the main thing that I think people hear when they're trying to start a business, the main thing they hear from their loved ones is, that's a saturated market. Why are you doing that? And I always just say, every market's saturated, don't worry about that. Just be better, do something different, whatever it is. And I know people who have started businesses where they're not in a saturated market. They've invented something, they've created something, and their job is 10 times harder than mine, because everyone knows how to use a lip balm, but not everyone knows why or how or when to use a product that they've never heard of. So a saturated market is great.
Yeah, there's demand for that thing out there, and you're filling an existing demand.
Exactly. And now, because people see, obviously I'm on Instagram all the time, so people in my life know what I'm doing, and any one of them and there's been heaps who are like, I want to start a business. I'm like, do it. I've had so many people come to me and they're like, oh, but it's already sort of done, and I'm like, cool, just do it a little bit differently. And it doesn't even have to be that differently. It could just be that you are the difference. You're the face of the brand, it's founder-led content, it's this and this, and you'll find people who just like your personality, and so you're their new cleanser brand or whatever it is.
Yeah, and people are so open and willing to try different and new things, so if you can put something in front of them that resonates more with them than what they've already got. I mean, we all know what it's like to be a consumer.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think, and this can be applied to other products and everything else, but I don't know a single woman who has one lipstick. They have 10 lipsticks or 15, and they're not all from the same brand, and they're not all the same shade. Everyone likes to have options, and Some days I just wear lip balm and other days I wear bright red lipstick. And so I just think, yeah, just because someone else is doing something doesn't mean that you can't do it as well.
So I asked you earlier, what did you do to validate your idea? And you said nothing. But actually, when we reflect, it feels like you did have a lot of things that you already knew to be inherently true by being a consumer of these things that validated your idea, that people use these products all the time and that they have all of these different ones in their handbag and different bits and pieces like that.
When I was thinking about this new business and I was trying the gift box and blah, blah, and we were, like, I keep talking about COVID, but we were in that, going in and out of lockdowns. And I'm thinking, what could be recession proof? And there's nothing that's recession proof. But I did read an article, or maybe I listened to a podcast about it, about how during the 2008 global recession, sales of L'Oreal cosmetics went through the roof. And it was because people were no longer buying a new car or a new fridge or a new house or putting in a pool, but they still wanted to have a little luxury. Apparently champagne sales went up, like Moet sales went up, because people were going to the liquor store and they wanted to have something to, I don't know, celebrate to getting the end of the week or whatever. And they thought, I don't treat myself to anything anymore but bubbles I want. And it was the same thing with makeup. They would receive it and it was like this new pretty little thing because they couldn't buy all the big pretty things anymore. And sales went up. And so I thought that was quite interesting. Not exactly why I started Peachy, but I did think, yeah, that's true. I mean, don't know who's wearing lip products in a Zoom with a mask on their face, but that's, yeah, I found that really, really interesting. And that probably validated things a little bit, yeah.
And how long were you working on the concept of Peachy before you actually physically launched your product?
I think I first reached out to our New Zealand manufacturer of the lip and cheek tints in March 2021, and we launched in April 2022, so 13 months.
Okay, great. And what were you doing throughout that time?
Saving money to put into the business.
And at this time you were saving money by working at Blah.
And Blah was doing
clients.
fine. It was great, and without that I wouldn't have been able to start Peachy. Blah paid for Peachy, really. What was I doing? So we were working on the lip and cheek tint range, which we launched with 4 shades, and it was sampling. So I was sort of telling them what kind of shades I wanted, and they would make a sample, what ingredients I wanted in there, what finish I wanted it to have, like matte, satin, glossy, whatever. Like all these little things that I really didn't know about, what kind of payoff we wanted, which is basically like how much pigment in your lip colour. Do you just want it to be like a hint or like a full blown? Or I learned so much about the cosmetics industry that I definitely did not know.
And so you're putting in a brief for that, are you, and working with a cosmetics company who's developing the product for you?
Yes, there was a colour chemist. There's not a lot of colour chemists in New Zealand, a lot doing skincare and things like that, but those are not colour products. So it was just working really closely with them. They would send me samples, I would give them the feedback, and we went back and forth like that. And then once I was happy with what we had, we then had to stability test them, which is basically like put them into, and they did this at their facility, put them into really hot temperatures, really cold temperatures over a long period of time, like a few months, to make sure that the products didn't spoil. They were going to have a long shelf life once they were with me and sold.
And so how did that process go? Were there disasters, or did it all go pretty smoothly and that's what allowed you to launch on time?
Oh, we did not launch on time.
Okay.
So it was March, and I'm thinking, could we launch before Mother's Day, which is May?
Oh, okay. You really didn't launch on time.
Well, I just did not have a realistic timeline in my mind. And then once I realised that it was quite a big process, I thought, cool, before Christmas. And then maybe early in the new year. And then we launch when we launch, and I'm so fine with that. But it was definitely learning a lot about cosmetics and how they work. And there were no disasters, actually, that I can speak of, touch wood. But I was only going to do 3 shades. And while they were developing a pink shade for me, the chemist called me and she said, I know that you just want like a soft rosy pink and we're going to do that for you, but we've made a mistake and we've made a coral and I think you're going to really love it. And I said, I don't want a coral. And she said, I'm just going to send it to you. And she knew a lot better than me because I tried it on once and I said, yep, cool, we're going to need to put that into production. And so we did 4 shades. So no real disasters, I wouldn't think. Things that I would have spent money on, things that didn't really need to be spent on looking back, but you don't know what you don't know.
And so is that because you underestimated how long it would take to get a cosmetics product formulated that you had initially anticipated it would be a few months and then it took a year?
Yeah, and I just roll my eyes at myself now when I think about it because I just had no idea about cosmetics production or formulation or anything and what you had to pay for and what you didn't have to pay for and just so many things that you just learn along the way. But I just really loved it. Yeah.
And what were some of those things that you said that you spent money on that you realise in hindsight you probably didn't need to spend on?
I do remember when I first told my husband that I wanted to start Peachy and I said, I think I had been squirreling away money and from blah, and I had 20k in the bank in the savings. I said I'm only going to do it if it costs 10 grand or less to set up, like before I start trading and actually can get some of that money back.
And where did you get that 10 grand figure from?
It was just half my savings.
Okay.
And so I thought, I don't want to spend
Felt
my
reasonable.
whole savings. So I was like, 10, that sounds like a great round number. I'll do that.
Okay.
It cost $45,000 to start a page. But luckily I had that whole year of working really, really hard at Blah and basically just siphoning all that money into setting up Peachy and paying invoice slowly over that year. So I did, there were things that I just really wanted that from working with my clients in marketing, I knew that I wanted them to, those are the things I really wanted to spend money on. And that was product, obviously, packaging, photography, website. That's what I really wanted to look. I wanted Peachy to look like an established business when it launched. I didn't want it to look like something that I had whipped up because I don't think I would have done a very good job with it.
And those are the 4 sort of key things that ended up costing the $45,000.
And also when I first had that $10,000 idea, I was just going to do a lip balm, one lip balm, clear lip balm, cool. And then once I got talking to the chemist and my manufacturer, and they were sort of like, what about some colour? And then it just evolved. And I was like, well, I want it to be multi-use, then let's make it lip, cheek, eyeshadow, good for sensitive skin, all these things. And so the minimum order quantity, this is behind the curtain a little bit, but minimum order quantity for each shade, and we had 4 shades, was 1,000 units. And so I'm sitting there at launch with 4,000 pots of lip and cheek tint thinking, holy crap, I hope someone buys this. Like, what am I going to do with 4,000, So that cost a lot of money.
And tell me about your first customer that came through. How did that feel? How did you get them?
Oh, I feel a little bit emotional thinking about that, actually. I knew that Instagram was going to be a really important tool in promoting, marketing, selling Peachy. It's just sort of the right brand for the right channel. And so I started posting on Instagram, like set up the Peachy Instagram account, started posting on there about 6 months before we launched. So I showed a little bit of the behind the scenes, shared sort of the key things, features and benefits and shades and blah, blah, blah of the lip and cheek tint. So I did a couple of giveaways of like, when we launch, you'll get this. And I think we had 500 followers on Instagram when we launched. And I think we had 40 sales on launch night.
Oh, wow.
Which was awesome. Awesome. I was so stoked with it. I would say 35 were friends and family of Nikki, but 5 weren't. The very first customer was my hairdresser. And I was just so excited. And like I said, 40 people on a launch night. I was thrilled, really, really happy. the relief of getting it live after working for so long to get it up and running and spend all that money. And we by no means made back that $45,000 in the launch. But it just felt like, okay, people are buying it. And then it was probably a week of really mostly friends and family buying it, which was so beautiful. And I felt so loved and I was so appreciative of it. I remember thinking, they just need to stop buying it so then I can see if people who don't know me are actually going to buy it.
Get the reality.
Yeah. And then when they did, I would just I don't know if your audience are familiar with Shopify, but that's what my website's hosted on. So that's what we sell our products through. Every time we get a sale, you can set your phone up so that you get a little ka-ching notification. And they were few and far between, but it was like so fantastic to get them. And not even for the money, but for, wow, someone's seen it and thought it was cool enough to spend $38 on it. I'm so thankful.
And were you worried through the first month, let's say, maybe the first 2 months, you had this 4,000 stock sitting there. Were you worried at any point that this wasn't going to sell through quickly enough? Because I'm sure the product has expiry dates at some point and things like that. So what were you feeling throughout those first few months?
Yeah, so they have a 2-year shelf life from opening. So I had some time. It wasn't like I needed to sell them in a couple of months. So it was okay. I just really believed in it, and because I had basically saved the money to launch it, I hadn't gone into debt to do it. And like I said, with the risk-averse thing, I think if I'd taken out a loan or borrowed money from someone to start it, I would have felt a lot more pressure. But I was sort of like, to me, that money is spent. Hopefully I can build something out of it. If I can't, that's a hard lesson to learn, but I'm not going to lose my house over it.
I want to understand a little bit more about the marketing piece of it and how you've gone about doing that, because you have expertise in that field, and I think it'll be really helpful for people listening and wondering sort of how to go about choosing different marketing channels. So the first question I have for you is, how do people, if they're thinking about showing up on a platform, how should they think about choosing their platform? Because it does get a bit overwhelming and confusing. There's obviously Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, depending on what your product is, and then your website, and God knows there's a million others. So how should people go about thinking about that?
Where is your customer? So you need to think of who your target customer is. And me, with a marketing background, but also probably just, I was making products that I wanted to use. So I'm thinking, okay, these are women in their 30s. They maybe want to wear makeup, maybe do wear makeup, maybe not sure how to wear makeup. Where are they looking? What are they doing? What platform are they hanging out on? And that was Instagram. I always say, like, we're an Instagram brand. We tried TikTok. I know you've looked at a couple of our TikTok videos, which is really embarrassing to me, but that hasn't quite flown for us. So we'll probably invest a little bit more time into that in 2026, but Instagram is where we're at. The key demographic is 35 to 44. So I know that they're on Instagram. I know that over time, as new people age into that group, we will need to focus more on TikTok. And so you just have to think, where are they? And that's where you go. And that's where you focus. Like, we're on Facebook, we're on TikTok, we're on Threads. Threads, ridiculously easy to grow a following. We've got a few thousand followers on there, and I've never posted, but Instagram's connected to it, so somehow that works. I'm on LinkedIn personally, but I don't do much on there. It's just, but I focus most of our ad spend and most of my time on Instagram.
And so for people that are on Instagram, all of your community there, if they're not coming in through an ad on Instagram, how are you driving them to your website to purchase?
Giveaways.
Oh, okay, interesting. Can you talk us through that a little bit? Because it sounds like that was also something that got the brand started before you actually launched your product as well.
Yes, and that is something that I learned from working with other consumer brands previously, was that people love free stuff. They love it.
Guilty as charged.
I know, who doesn't? I love free stuff. And not all of our customers are mums, and I don't want to, push out anyone who isn't. We love to get gifts, right? Surely. We love to give gifts. But who is buying all the gifts? It's your mum, or it's them that's actually putting thought into things. And so to me, I'm like, okay, they're the ones buying all the gifts, giving gifts, making sure everyone's okay, da-da-da-da-da. Let's try on some level to be that for them. We do a big promotion leading into Easter called the Easter Bonanza. And it's every order placed receives an Easter egg, usually a boxed Easter egg, and that goes off. That's one of our biggest months of the year.
So that's a gift with purchase.
It's
and
a gift.
People are just so excited to get the gift with purchase.
Yeah, because
even though it's completely unrelated to your product.
Think about it. But everyone loves chocolate.
Exactly.
But think about it. When did you last buy a boxed Easter egg for yourself? You don't, but you kind of want one. And so that's what we did, and that's kind of how I always look at it, is like, what do they want? What are they giving to other people but not getting for themselves?
And did you do something similar for Black Friday, or did you do discounting for Black Friday, or nothing at all?
No, so we did Black Friday, which was a site-wide sale, different percentages off different products, but it was with a minimum spend $79. Every order that was $79 or over got our new grape lip balm, which was unreleased.
What are some other tactics like that you think have worked really well for Peachy as a brand, or that you've seen working really well for clients that you've had, that might be applicable to someone who is starting a very early stage business?
So the gift with purchase is a really, really good one, and it can cost, especially if it's not your product, like there's a different retail amount that you would need to spend to buy that to then give it, which isn't always financially viable. But it's to connect with other businesses in not the same products, but in the same vein, have the same kind of customer base. And I do so many product swaps. So I will...
Can you give us an example?
Sure. So KDB Jewellery, which is a beautiful jewellery brand. I'm wearing a necklace today. We often do product swaps, so we will agree on a retail value that we're going to swap, say $1,000. So she'll send me $1,000 worth of her product, and I'll send her $1,000 worth of mine. So for her, it's actually only costing a fraction of that, whatever she pays her hard costs. And then she gets all of this retail value from me, and I do the same.
How does that product swap actually work? Are you giving those away with some of your highest value orders, or what does that look like?
Usually I'll kind of plan out a few months ahead or even a year ahead our sort of promotions that we are going to be doing over the next whatever period of time. So whether that's a sale, and we try and only do 2 sales a year, so Black Friday and then usually like a Peachy birthday sale. But we need other promotions to keep people excited, like I talked about the Easter Bonanza, and then the Secret Santa promotion where we're gifting things. So potentially we swap a bunch of product, and then I use that in our Secret Santa gift with purchase. So if you spend $49 or over during that period of time, you get a free wrapped piece of jewellery or one of the other brands that I've swapped with during that time. And it's not just Christmas. We'll every now and then just do a gift with purchase promotion just to keep people excited and give them a reason to be coming back, or give them a reason to buy a product of ours that they might have been eyeing up for a long time, and now they think, oh, I'll get a little something else with it too, and so they buy it then.
It's really helpful to pick your brain on all those marketing pieces. I think that's going to be such valuable advice for people who are thinking out or in the very early stages of starting their own business. I want to dive into the point where you almost threw in the towel. I think it was last year with Peachy, and what was going on there? How did you manage to push through that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. That last year, it's a little bit of a story. The first few months after we launched, it was sort of slow and steady. And then as our Instagram following grew, giveaways and promotions and bringing people in, and our first Easter Bonanza brought in a whole heap of new customers, sales just really steadily grew. Like, it was just doing really, really well. And it was so exciting. And then in, I think, May last year, May 2024, we had an average month. I wouldn't even say a bad month of sales, just an average month. We'd had our birthday sale the month before and Easter the month before that, so people were probably just a little bit stocked up on Peachy at the time. And I just freaked out. And I thought, I've got to stop spending money. I didn't know how to manage cash flow, really. I didn't know how to run a business. Like, we'd been doing really well, but there were some things that you just don't know. Well, I just didn't know. And managing cash flow was one of those things. And I just kicked myself for the decisions that I made last year in May, because I stopped spending money on marketing. And I know about marketing, and that is the last thing that you should do when sales are going down, is pull marketing spend, because who's going to hear about you, know about you, anything. And so the following 6 months were really rough, I would say, 6 months. And then we had Black Friday 2024, and on the launch night of Black Friday 2024, I was thinking, this is going to be amazing. This was our best month of sales last year. We had such a big launch. It was incredible. And it went okay, not great, and definitely not what we needed it to be after the 6 months that we'd just had. And I went to bed crying and said to my husband, I think I'm going to have to get a job, and I might have to close Peachy. And I hadn't really talked to him about what had been happening. I'd maybe said, business is a little bit slow, but I had kind of been thinking Black Friday will be the cash injection that we need to keep propelling us forward, and it wasn't. And I was very upset, and I scrolled Seek all night that night looking at marketing jobs, and I thought, it's not the end of the world. It's going to be okay. Maybe I shut down Peachy, or maybe it goes back to being a side hustle, or I just didn't know. And so although I did have those thoughts, and I've got some pretty grim messages that I sent to some of my best buddies in business.
Oh no.
I'm like, it's all over. It was probably only 12 hours that I really considered it. And then I thought, I feel too heartbroken to let that happen. I just thought, I can't walk away. If I have to get a part-time job or a full-time job or whatever, so be it. But Peachy continues. And that was it. And then I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll open a shop. And we actually opened a pop-up shop for 6 months from February this year. And it was really, and Peachy was in it, and a whole lot of other brands, New Zealand brands that I love, and it was great, and it was a great experience. But I was working in the shop, and I really miss that flexibility of being able to work whenever and wherever and all that stuff. But yeah, that November 2024 was definitely very, very tough. And yeah, I did feel like maybe this is it, or maybe this is the start of the wind down, and I don't know how to fix it.
For someone who might be going through the same thing and is an early stage founder, what advice would you give them?
If it's going to break your heart to give it all up, close it or whatever, if you really, really want to, and you really work so hard, and I know you're already working so hard already, you just have to make it happen. If you need to get part-time work to pay the bills while you sort that out, then that's so be it. But if it's what you really want, you'll do it. There's like that, like in dating, when people are dating, and like say the person that you're, dating isn't texting you back or doesn't call you when you want or whatever, and people say if he wanted to, he would.
Yeah.
And that's what I say about this. If you want to, you will. And it might not work. It might, 6 months down the line, you might have to close doors, or you might have to throw it all, just whatever. But at least you gave it all you could. And talk to people. That was something that I wasn't very good at doing. But try and talk to people, listen to all the podcasts you can, just do everything that you can, and most likely you'll be able to fix it. Cut fat, trim fat where you can. Like if we moved from a more expensive office to half that, like just reduce overheads as much as you can and do your best to make it work, but don't go into debt to do it.
Sounds like you've had a really great year this year.
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations. Is there anything that you think would be really valuable advice for other people that you've done to turn things around?
Yep, I discontinued our slower selling product ranges. So probably a mistake that I had made while things were going good was we did launch a lot of new ranges, and it was fantastic and I loved it, but I just thought that everything was going to continue as is on an uphill, spike. But so then I had all of these ranges, and some sold really well, some didn't sell that well, but I still had to restock, and I still had to put money on ranges that were sort of a slow burner or whatever, and I just cut
minimum
them.
order quantities as well.
And I just cut them. I just said that's it for those. I need to focus on our best sellers, grow those ranges, and just basically chip away. You just have to chip away at it, especially if you've got no money in the bank to be doing what you kind of ideally would be able to do to pull up out of it, is that you just have to chip away at it like one bit at a time.
That's really helpful, practical advice for people. Thank you for sharing that. So I want to know how your definition of success has changed over time from when you were in the marketing agency to when you started out on your own.
I don't know if it's changed that much. I definitely, the thing is I've had a child since then, and so the flexibility to be able to drop him off at school, pick him up from school, spend time with him and go to athletics day, in the middle of a Thursday or whatever, is a fantastic thing that I can do because I'm self-employed, which would be more difficult if I wasn't. So that's definitely changed in my mind as a priority. But I always it's never been my goal to make $100 million and work my ass off till midnight every night and have 100 staff and all that sort of thing. That was never a success pillar for me. It was more just be comfortable love what I do, be comfortable financially. I mean, if I won the lotto, I wouldn't say no to it. But it wasn't about that. It was more just having the ability to spend time with my family and do something that I actually really, really, really love. And that's what I'm doing. And I really loved marketing as well. But Peachy, the community that we have is just like next level and makes my day every day.
You feel like you're doing something purposeful?
Yes, and your listeners can laugh and roll your eyes at that because I sell makeup.
Not at all.
But it is purposeful, and the amount of messages I get from people saying, I didn't know how to apply makeup, but now I've got this and it's so easy to use, or I just put that lip gloss on when I go to the supermarket and I feel 10 times better, or whatever it is. People love it, and I'm just there with them the whole way.
That is so cool. Congratulations on what you've built. How many people are on your team?
Me and one other.
Okay, that's amazing. So you're 3 years into business now, are you?
Yes.
3 years into business, you and one other, and you've had a ripper of a year. So that's really impressive. I just think it's helpful for people to understand the stage you're at, how many people you've got on your team, so that when they're sort of planning things out for themselves.
Definitely. I have a business mentor who says you can hire one full-time staff member for every $1 million of revenue a year. So we're not doing $1 million a year. I have a part-time pickpacker, and the rest of it is just me. And I think people probably need to be aware of that. And I actually don't want to have a big team. That was probably what scared me a lot about owning a business, was like managing people, because I just want to be friends with everyone. But they need to be able to do their jobs as well. So, yeah, small team, run it tight. I'm probably, as you can tell, don't want to take on a lot of overheads or a lot of financial continued commitments like that. But yeah, maybe one day we'll grow Peachy a little bit more and have a few more people on the team, and that'll be amazing. Maybe not.
Yeah, well, you didn't want a business at all, and here we are. So we'll chat to you in another 3 years and see how you're going with that. But thank you for sharing that advice from your mentor. That is really helpful. A book, podcast, resource that you would recommend to someone who's considering a career shift or about to start their own business?
Podcast, I would say, think of, instead of like a specific podcast, think of like a business owner or someone doing what you want to do or something similar, and then listen, like put their name into Spotify and listen to every podcast they've ever been on.
That's great advice.
That's what I did. And book, this is probably a little bit more for the marketing nerds, but I really, really enjoyed Shoe Dog, which is the guy who started Nike, and he was selling them literally out of his car boot, and I always think of that. And he struggled for years and years and had to borrow money from people and blah blah blah, and I mean, it's Nike now. So
yeah, those are always incredible stories, incredibly inspiring how things do truly start off at the level that we all start and turn into what they are today.
And it's good to know, because there's no such thing as an overnight success, and I think that's such a good example, because everyone knows what Nike is, and he just nearly threw in the towel 100 times but just kept going.
Thank you for sharing. That's a great one. And what is next for Peachy? What are you most excited about?
I am excited about being back on the right track with Peachy and bringing out more products in line with what our customers really want, more lip balm flavours, more products around that. I don't want to give too much away. I'm excited to do more things with our community next year and keep creating kind of a spot for all women, whether you're into makeup or not really into makeup, to hang out and just, I don't know, enjoy.
Awesome. That's cool. I'm very excited to see what other flavours and different bits and pieces are coming out for Peachy sometime next year. And where can people find you and follow along with Peachy and purchase some products?
Cool. So our Instagram handle is Peachy Lip Co _, and then we are peachy-lipco.com. This
was such a helpful conversation and so insightful down into the really, the nitty-gritty pieces that I think people don't even really think about when they're starting a business. So super helpful for people to have that context to even know what to start thinking about. But then B, for people who are thinking about those things, to get some real world practical advice that is fresh in your mind, because it's all been happening over the past 3 years. So thank you for being so generous with your knowledge base there, and especially in all the marketing pieces, because you have so much to share there. And I think it's a great idea for people to jump onto Peachy's page, and they can follow along and they can actually see what you're doing and understand how you're marketing these different bits and pieces just by being on the Peachy page.
Yeah, one thing on that I'll just give a piece of advice, because I have a lot of people who start businesses come to me and say, I don't want to show up on stories all the time. I don't want to talk on stories. I feel like a dick. And if you are an e-commerce brand and Instagram is, where you've decided your customers are hanging out, you have to. If you need to be founder-led businesses are where it's at. People buy from people, and you might feel like a dick showing up on stories every day, but you'll feel more like a dick if your business fails and there was something that you could have done for free to save it, and that's it.
That is a very powerful way to end. Thank you so much for dropping that in. It's actually something I wanted to dig into, but you've rounded that up so nicely at the end. So thank you so much for your time. It's been really nice to get into things in more depth and get to know you better.
Thank you. This was my first podcast and you were very easy to chat to, so I appreciate that.
Oh, you did an amazing job.